we decided as staff to look at the programs and how can we encourage more. And specifically, there are 5 different areas in which we're looking at incenting development. Sustainable development, we want to see more sustainable buildings, more sustainable development. Income and housing diversity, making sure that the housing that's being provided is a diverse housing type or a diverse housing income level. Also paying attention to architectural and design quality, making sure that projects that are developed under these programs are achieving higher standards. And public access to the Grand River is another goal that we're trying to achieve. So projects that help us achieve that will get added bonus as well. Public transportation is another interesting one. As the bus rapid transit operates, we want to see us leverage that infrastructure with new development opportunities. And so projects that provide access to public transportation by providing bus passes to their residents or the workers in the buildings will receive additional benefit as well.
So it's so timely. Last week I can't remember, I was meeting with a group, and one of the questions somebody asked me was, why do we have incentives to develop in the city? And so my response, and maybe you can add on to this, and many of you watching probably already know this, is that it's more expensive to develop in a city where you already have buildings, some of them obsolete, or what we call brownfields, where you have even potential remediation, or you have to do demolition or to renovate an old building, than it is to go outside the city and build on what we call a greenfield or a piece of land that has nothing on it. And so we want to encourage development and redevelopment of our urban core, and we know that that's more expensive.
That's exactly right. And the programs exist solely for that reason. Our urban core has suffered so much disinvestment for so many years that it makes it very challenging for us to redevelop those properties. We have also vacant lots that haven't been developed within the city, and currently they might be used as parking surface, but we know that that's not the highest and best use long term. A lot of properties along the river were used as industrial, and those buildings have since been vacated, and now we've got to find a reuse for those buildings as well. So the programs exist for that very reason, to incent and level the playing field with those greenfield sites.
Yeah. So one of the things you brought up was mixed income projects. So we've been talking about this a lot. I feel like it comes up at every single city commission meeting because we're getting inundated with development projects, and for a number of reasons, having affordable housing, multiple options for housing types, is a priority to us. It came out of the housing strategy work that we really want to have mixed income projects. So why don't you talk a little bit about how your department is working on that initiative?
Sure. So again, with the policies, we're starting to see an interest in developing more affordable housing, but then also including an element of market rate housing and mixing up those two uses within one building that also might include some commercial retail space or office space as well. And those are really great projects because they're accomplishing several of our goals, and generally they're connected to transit in some way close to the city. So one of the things that we're finding is that the federal program for low-income housing tax credits also could be utilized in a similar way with market rate. And so if the deal is structured appropriately by the developer, we can achieve both of those goals in one building, thereby having the same finishes for the low-income housing units as they are for the market rate, and the community enjoys a mixed income approach to development long term. Now, we've only got 2 buildings that are mixed income at this point, but we have one on the drawing books that's under construction, and actually a second that will be following up on Michigan Street. The Diamond Place project is one that is a great example of what's going to occur when mixed income housing is developed, along with a small grocery store and some additional retail, and it's right on the Silver Line. So we've got a lot of opportunities to do that in the future, and I think we want to continue to incent that level of development.
Yeah, that's exciting. And the other one is Fulton.
Fulton. So 20 East Fulton is a project being developed just right across the street from another BRT station. So the more we can connect people of all income levels to transit and provide them a great living experience, we want to do that.
Yeah, so thank you for your work on that. Next I want to talk to you. You've been actively engaged in the area around entrepreneurship and innovation and supporting startups. You serve on the Smart Zone, and a lot of changes recently happened with rethinking how we support entrepreneurs and individuals starting businesses in our city. So why don't you talk a little bit about that? I mean, we're always talking about this entrepreneurial ecosystem. It's kind of a mouthful, but it's basically all the different resources we have in our community to support entrepreneurs and individuals starting businesses. And so it's kind of a complicated ecosystem. There's a lot of different players doing a lot of different work, and some of them have their niche, and some kind of do more crossover and work together to support the same population. But why don't you talk a little bit about the city's involvement, why it's important, and then also some of the changes that people may be seeing?
Sure. So for a long time, we've promoted Grand Rapids as a great place to be a life science startup business. And that focus was very narrow. Now, we did achieve some great outcomes, and we continue to do that today, but we wanted to shift the focus a little bit more to the entrepreneur as opposed to our assets here in the community. We wanted to match those up a little more closely because I think we were overlooking the opportunity to do entrepreneurship and innovation at the neighborhood level. And when you say we're just a life science community, you begin to exclude people from participating in that conversation. And so our work with Start Garden has transformed in a way that takes a look at what the city needs to do to be interesting to entrepreneurs of all types. And that can include individuals that are just looking for a job in technology fields or in lifestyle business fields or starting a business downtown. So one of the things we looked at is, as an entrepreneur, can I find a job here? Are there opportunities for me here? Are there great places for me to live along with maybe my family? So we're taking a look at this ecosystem a little differently because there's much more to it than just technology businesses or lifestyle businesses. We want to be more inclusive. And so as a result, we've begun a relationship with Start Garden to start to infiltrate that message throughout the city and then grow that to the state of Michigan. Working with the entrepreneurial support organizations such as the Small Business Development Center, such as GROW. All of the existing organizations that do great work to support entrepreneurs, we want to continue that, and we want to actually increase the bar and raise the bar so that we're making sure that we are helping entrepreneurs at all levels.
Yeah. So that takes me to the next question, which you and I have even spent lots of time talking about, and that is, so how do we measure success? So what are some of the economic development outcomes that we're striving to achieve? How do we measure that? And then how do we track progress? And if we're not making significant progress, what are we going to do about it?
So we have a one-year contract with Start Garden, and the first thing we're going to do is try to get a handle on our current state. How many entrepreneurs do we have here in Grand Rapids? How many exist within the region? And what is a realistic expectation for success? Because I think everyone says, yes, we have a ton of entrepreneurs here, but do we really? And how can we prove that? We have a great relationship with Grand Valley State University, and we want to make sure that students that are interested in entrepreneurship and innovation are getting access to whether it's the resources or the individuals they need to be successful. The other thing we want to do is visit with all of the entrepreneurial support organizations and make sure that they're all on board with us so that we can start to track progress alongside them as well and start to increase funding opportunities and availability of resources to those that are delivering great outcomes.
So one of the observations I've made is that we track a lot of outputs, so we know how many people are receiving services or attending classes. But how do we know that the people are being successful because of that contact, because of attending that class? Did their lives improve? Were we able to help them be more successful because of that? And I think that's what we're wrestling with right now. What does that look like?
So we've tracked outputs for quite some time, and we're not seeing the outcomes that we wanted to see. And so that's why we're changing direction a little bit. We're taking a little bit of a pivot. We will still continue to track outputs because the state requires us to track how much money is being collected by these entrepreneurs, how much is being generated, sales and how many jobs are we creating, how many companies are starting. And we'll start to see those numbers improve, although they've been pretty steady. But then really what it is how is the community changing as a result of all of that? And those are the outcomes that we're going to have to identify once we determine what we have at hand.
So we are down just about a minute left. So as we finish up this section of the show, if somebody's listening, if they watch this and they want more information on where they can get support for, maybe they want to start a business or maybe they're thinking about doing a development, who should they contact?
The best place to start is growgrandrapids.org, or you can contact the Economic Development Office at 616-456-3431.
Great. Thank you. So, Kara, thank you for all your work. We love having you at the city and really appreciate all the work that you do in your department. So,
thank you.
Thank you.
Let's say you're making a movie. Maybe you're making a commercial or a project for work. So, you get your friends and your family in on it, write a killer script, get the perfect location, and even plan out a few special effects. But what happens if you don't get everything in one shot? Maybe you have more than one location or different groups of people. And remember all those special effects you wanted? If you don't know how to edit videos, you could end up spending hours trying to get the perfect video in one shot. Join us for the Final Cut Pro class at GRTV. You'll get hands-on experience, expert training, and learn the basics of video editing to help bring your ideas to life, all while taking your skills to the next level. You could even air your videos on GRTV for everyone to see. Community Media Center members get a discount on the classes, and best of all, we're right near downtown Grand Rapids. Go to grcmc.org/GRTV and click Take a Class for more information. The Final Cut Pro class at GRTV. Start here. Go anywhere.
And welcome back to City Connection here on GRTV's Livewire Channel 24. We had in the studio with us Kara Wood speaking with the mayor. Thank you both. We're going to take a few questions and talk a little bit further about that. For now, we want to let everybody know that you can call us at 459-4881. Email works too, cityconnection@grcmc.org, Twitter and Facebook at GRTVaccess. And again, we're streaming live on the Rapidian.org. Kara, Rosalind, both of you, that was so informative for me, and it was very, very interesting. Couple notes that I had just as we were going through there. You mentioned Start Garden more than once, so I think it could use maybe a description or explanation in how the Economic Development Department works with Start Garden.
Sure. So Start Garden is an organization that has supported entrepreneurs through a fund, and they've been investors in entrepreneurs and companies started by entrepreneurs here in the city and across the nation, actually. They've taken an approach with us to serve the city and its potentially region over time, helping us coordinate efforts with the entrepreneurial service organizations across the city of Grand Rapids and the region as well. So they have relationships with these organizations that will continue to cultivate and help us with the data. So collecting the information on how many entrepreneurs we have in the region and specifically in the city, and what we're doing to help them and making sure they're getting access to the resources that they need to develop or drive outcomes.
Okay.
And so you may remember that Start Garden started the 5x5 night, providing a little bit of money as a seed money for organizations wanting to start a business, and then it kind of evolved over time, and then individuals who were starting a company or wanted to launch something, they could go from receiving $5,000 to potentially 20 or 25 or 100,000. So they really work to kind of work through that process, and what does that look like, and how do you provide capital, a little bit of capital for startups. And then they also have done work around accelerators, so bringing together entrepreneurs with established companies and matching them up, and starting to develop relationships between small startups and larger companies. And so they over the years have provided a number of entrepreneur type of services. And the hope with this new partnership is that we'll be able to learn from what they've done, but then also really have this public-private partnership where we're able to bring together some public dollars as well as private dollars from the community through foundations or investors to marry those together to have even a greater impact.
Okay.
Yes.
Identifying the barriers is the biggest challenge we have. What are the barriers for entrepreneurs in the technology world? What are the barriers for lifestyle businesses like shoe stores or restaurants? Because building great neighborhoods is all about having those amenities for entrepreneurs and people that want to live here. So we're hoping to uncover some of those barriers and working on strategies to fix them.
Yeah. Okay. And advocating for access to capital through microloans, having the banks come around the table, and really help. I mean, we hear that often from entrepreneurs is that they're struggling to find access to capital. And so we need to really encourage and push the private sector to step up and be a part of that solution as well.
Okay. I wanted to ask a little bit, maybe the three of us are the last people that would be able to address this, but an outside perspective of Grand Rapids as being a place for entrepreneurs. Are you hearing such a thing? I've actually had a conversation with somebody brand new to Grand Rapids, came here from west of here within this year, and that was a little bit of a perspective she had. And you know, we're on the inside, it's hard to say, but what do you hear?
Well, we hear a variety of different narratives, I'll say. We hear that it is a great place to be an entrepreneur, but also for entrepreneurs to bring their ideas to Grand Rapids to test them. And we actually really want to provide that test environment for new businesses and new startups, whether it's a restaurant or it's a technology business or a lifestyle business. So we like the idea of being that environment where entrepreneurs feel comfortable bringing their ideas, their technologies, testing them out with our corporations, with our small businesses, within our neighborhoods. And I think that's where we want to continue to grow our narrative.
Yeah, and I would say that's where we want to be.
Okay.
I think there's always room for improvement. I think for some people that's absolutely true. I think, you know, what I've heard from people is that some people really struggle breaking into getting the support that they need to be successful. So we're looking at that as well. Like, how do we make sure that it truly is a great place for all entrepreneurs, regardless of gender or race? And so we're doing a lot of work in the Hispanic community, African American community, and with women-owned businesses.
Okay.
Grand Valley State University did a great study called Empowering Entrepreneurship, and I think that really opened our eyes to what was really going on here in the ecosystem. And one of the things that we're not known for is taking risk. And while there are great investment funds in the community, they're not really risky funds. They're investing in almost sure deals. So what we need to do is find more risk capital, and that will allow our own people to take risk on new businesses.
Okay. Yeah, I can't even imagine how you'd want to assure somebody to take big risks and not be fearful, but some safety nets, I would imagine, would be the key to that.
Yeah.
Kara, another thing you had mentioned in your 5 priorities had to do with public access to the Grand River, and I wondered if there was anything maybe in the works you could describe a little bit. What is such a thing?
Well, a good example is the city owns most of the available property on the river, and so as a result of those properties being owned by the city, we have an opportunity to make sure that public access occurs when those are redeveloped. And what we want to encourage is any other privately owned properties that have the opportunity to provide public access, that they do so, whether it's, you know, a connection to the trail or you know, maybe an easement so that the city can provide that public access, and really making sure that we're not restricting access, future access.
Yeah, it's a little hard to imagine how additional development would lead to more access, but it sounds like you're saying it should be built into whatever's coming.
Absolutely.
Yeah. A perfect example of that is, you know, one of the city-owned properties that the city has along the river. So we own 201 Market. Beautiful stretch of land along the river, 18 acres, and right now it's not accessible to the public. I mean, we have our trucks there and we have our utilities there, and so we're using it as city space. So as that property, when that property is sold and redeveloped, making sure that there's access to the river so that we do connect the trail, that we have green space, that we have public space along the river, and that it's a really thoughtful development, and we're able to do that because it's city owned, so we're able to build in some requirements.
Okay. We do have a question on the subject, and this one's from somebody that lives on this side of town, on the west side over here. And it says there's a lot of new development on the west side currently, and many of my neighbors are afraid that the rising property taxes pushing us out of our homes, and our families have lived here for decades. So how does the city plan to address that concern? And that's always the concern, whether it's on Wealthy Street with all the development that happened there throughout. So how is that always kind of in the forefront and addressed?
Well, I would say that property tax values are going to take some time to really increase. There has to be a substantial amount of development and improvement in properties before the values really will cause them to be in a financial state of not being able to pay their taxes. So I think, you know, understanding exactly how property tax values increase over time is, you know, a topic of conversation that the city could address. But I don't know that it's going to be something that actually happens as a result of substantial development unless it's over a period of 15 years, like Wealthy Street might be. And it is pretty concentrated. It doesn't usually affect everyone. The rates of growth over the last few years have been, minimal. In fact, when we estimate increases in property tax growth, it's generally about 0.5% or less in some of the neighborhood areas. In the downtown, it might be a little more. It might be 0.75%. But I would say that the growth rates aren't such that there should be cause for concern. But the other thing is, when improvements do occur, and we like them too, especially when the city puts in new infrastructure, we want rates to increase a little bit, but it shouldn't reflect negatively on the homeowners.
And then it goes beyond property tax, of course, too, because if a neighborhood is being developed and becoming more valuable, maybe it's not reflected in the property tax immediately, but maybe the cost to actually rent or obtain a house.
Yeah, and that happens sometimes too.
Yeah, and I think that's actually the greater concern when you look at displacement, is that you're going to have development and that will drive up. Either it's going to be development that removes affordable housing, or it's development that's going to have an impact on the area by driving up either the price of the homes when they go up for sale or the rents. And we've been talking about this a lot at the commission. It was a significant part of the conversation last year with the housing strategy work that was done. And really, we need to figure out what is within our ability to impact or influence. Another conversation is how do we, in some neighborhoods, especially here on the west side, you have, it's been a number of years where you've started to see rents increase because you have an influx of the number of students. So a landlord can rent out 3 or 4 bedroom to 4 students and charge each of them $500 or $600, so they can get $2,000 a month for rent versus the $1,200 for a family. So families have been displaced, and so we're looking at each of the different elements that potentially can impact affordability. And I think we're going to need a multi-pronged approach. One thing Commissioner Kelly and I have talked about is if we have adequate student housing that's available to students, does that free up houses that can actually be rented by families? So again, it's really going to be a mix. And then what Kara said as well, making sure that when we have the opportunity, if we can have a mixed income project, we need to be making that a priority. It's not going to be the best fit. It's not going to be, every development isn't going to be able to do that and qualify for the incentives. But we are seeing more and more of them and more projects that come forward wanting to do a mixed income project. And we've been working, Kara's department especially, to try to help developers get there.
Okay. All right, so that was the sound of another question coming in. It says, when moving forward with Grand Rapids goals for inclusion and diversity, is there any room for tax incentives for minority-owned businesses specifically then?
Yes, we do have incentives for minority-owned businesses to get contract work. So we have bid discounts, and those are available through the Diversity and Inclusion Office. We don't have specific incentives for minority-owned businesses per se, but all of our incentives would be available just as they would to any other type of business.
Yeah.
Okay. There was something that I heard a little bit about this past week, and I just really want explanation because I don't really understand the situation. It has to do with division, and the comment was along the lines of that GR Forward really had an idea that there would be no more additional social service agencies there, and it had to do with the idea of Hartside maybe moving from one building and expanding in another one on Division. Is there anything that you could explain or clear up about that whole concept?
Well, I can tell you that we've been fortunate in that area to get a lot of federal and state program funds for affordable housing, and so now what we don't want to do is concentrate poverty. That's something that isn't any city's goal or part of city building, and so we want to make sure that we have diversity along South Division. I'm not sure specifically if it's something that came out of GR Forward, but I know there are efforts underway to evaluate the current state of South Division as it relates to the population it serves and what happens going forward.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't heard that, so I'm not aware of that. 2 things though related to Division, and I agree with Kara, but this is for the entire city, is that we want you don't want this concentration of poverty. You really want even low-income housing. You want it decentralized throughout a city. But for Division, we are looking into, and we're working closely with the neighborhoods surrounding Division to embark on a planning process for Division Street. So we haven't launched that yet because we're still in the process of getting all of the partners around the table and securing funds to do that. But we're looking at doing similar to an area-specific plan or similar to what we did along Michigan Street and looking at all of Division, but it would be a very comprehensive planning process that would include all of the neighbors and organizations and companies that currently are on Division.
Okay.
So that, I think we're hoping to do that by the end of this year, get that
Yes.
off the ground.
And we want to be inclusive in having the neighborhoods participate in the discussion and specifically maybe leading some of the discussions themselves within the neighborhoods.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Kara Wood, Economic Development Director. Thanks for being here today, conversation with the mayor, and then taking some of these questions. Thank you very much. We're going to take our last break. I think we'll come back from the break with a question from the Rapidian. We'll be right back.
Okay. Thank
Hey Mayor Bliss, this is Mariah Kennedy, citizen journalist, coming at you for City Connection Question of the Month. How can Grand Rapids influence the rapid transportation system to increase scheduled times and accessibility to Central City residents?
And welcome back to City Connection. That question through our portion of our organization, the Rapidian, and from Mariah Kennedy. So good question there for you, Mayor.
Yeah, that's a great question. Am I supposed to repeat the question, or did everyone hear it?
It broadcast, so
It
we're
broadcast.
good.
Okay, we're good. That's a great question, and we're always looking at that. So I serve on the Rapid Board, but I'm one of 15 members. So a lot of people, I think, sometimes they don't realize that the Rapid is an urban transit partnership. So it covers not just the city of Grand Rapids; it's a regional system. And so I serve on the Rapid Board with members from Wyoming and Walker and Granville and East Grand Rapids. I think I covered all of them, right? Kentwood, Walker, Wyoming, East, and Granville, and us, Grand Rapids. And so when you look at service changes, we do look at that every couple of years and we take comments. We're always looking at different routes based on ridership. We have long talked about wanting to have, especially on our heavier routes, our greater used routes, that we want to increase the amount of time. So how much time is between, and then also extend them later into the evening. So that's been one of our goals for a long time. It's just it's contingent on how much money we have to do that because the system is expensive to run. We are looking at a couple things right now. And we do this regularly. We look at routes and are there ways to change routes to better meet the needs. So even right now, we're looking at changing Route 19 and running it up Michigan all the way out to Oak Industrial, because there's a lot of individuals that work out at Oak Industrial in one of those companies and they don't currently have access to transportation to the Rapid. So we are looking at making that change. When it comes to the BRT, we are moving forward on the Laker line. So soon we'll be embarking on building another BRT, and that will come all the way from Allendale down Lake Michigan. It'll come up, it'll come over to Fulton, down Monroe, and then up the hill on Michigan Street up to Grand Valley, the Grand Valley building up on Michigan Street.
By Lafayette there.
By Lafayette, okay. Thank you. So we will soon have both the Silver Line and the Laker Line, and my hope would be that we extend the Laker Line out to Plymouth, because you have a lot of people that work on Michigan and go all the way out there. So that's a little bit further down the road. But what you can do, so what I would tell citizens is that you should constantly be giving input about the transit system, because your input actually does make an impact. So the changes that we're making to Route 19, that came directly from residents and from workers and employers saying we need to change this route because we need access. So I'd say first start by giving your input, showing up. All of our meetings are public. There's an opportunity for public comment. I often, when I get requests from constituents that I serve, I will have a meeting with individuals at the Rapid to talk about, is there a way that we can meet this need? I know that Walker right now is working on a pilot project as well. So there's opportunities to do some creative things, but we need you to come to the table and share your ideas with us.
Okay, thank you for that. Mariah's question, a good one there. I should mention earlier the question having to do with the west side, and property taxes came from Pete. We have another question now, and this is from Tanya. It says, what's the progress on the river getting its rapids back?
Yes, that's a great question. So there's lots, you don't hear about it so much because it's a lot of behind the scenes stuff right now, but we are moving forward. So right now for the river restoration project, we're working on two things. We're working on easements along the river, so identifying and securing easements along both east and west side of the river. And then secondly is that we are in the permitting process. So if you can imagine the number of state and federal departments that we have to work with, and the permits that we have to submit, and reviews that we have to go through, it's pretty lengthy. So we're working with about 12 state and federal departments. Every department, from FEMA to Army Corps to endangered species, there's a whole list of departments that we're working with that we have to submit permits. They have to review them. You know, it's a significant project, and we need to make sure that we are looking at every potential impact and making sure that we're not missing anything. So right now we're in that process. It'll probably take another 6 to 8 months to work through those two pieces. And then after that, we have to get approval and build a lamprey barrier upstream. So we have to prevent lamprey from going upstream.
How far are they?
Lamprey, well, you know, interesting thing about lamprey are weak swimmers. So right now the 5th Street Bridge acts as a barrier. And so if we change the 5th Street Dam, or the fish ladder, if we change that, then lamprey potentially can swim upstream, and we have to prevent that from happening because they're an invasive species. So that's something we have to work through. And then through all of these studies that we've been going through, we have found that we have a endangered species of snuff box mussels. So we are working through the endangered species department, and we have to, we'll actually have to move those mussels and protect them, and then put them back into their natural habitat. So that's another piece that we have to work through. And then we'll start working on the final engineering drawings and then raising money. So it'll take private dollars and public dollars to make this happen. But I'm really hopeful that 3 years from now we'll have construction equipment in the river.
That is shocking. That
Yes,
is just amazing. Okay.
It is.
Because my next question was going to be, do you have any doubts that this will happen with all the regulation, federal and state regulators that are involved in obtaining the land to do this? That's surprising.
You know, I'm very optimistic. I mean, the fact that we several years ago were designated as an urban waters project, and we have support from the federal government to help us work through a lot of these more complicated issues. You know, that when we were designated as a project, that gave me great hope that this clearly is a project that can happen. And there are other cities throughout the entire country who are removing dams and restoring rivers to their natural state. So it's not like we are at the front of this movement. There are cities all over the place. I mean, even I was just talking to someone, and they were filling me in on some of the work happening in Traverse City with the removal of dams up there. So I'm going to add that to my list of places to go visit. But you know, Flint right now is talking about removing dams. So this is not something brand new. It takes time to work through the details to make sure you don't miss anything and to make sure that we get it right. It'll be an expensive project, but I anticipate we'll be able to raise probably $10 to $15 million from the private sector to help make it happen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Again, very fascinating.
It is.
Thanks for that question from Tanya. We do have another question. This one comes from Frank via email, and it says, this is back on the subject of development here in Grand Rapids, and you're going to take this one on your own because Kara's
Yes.
gone. It says,
I'll do my best.
Okay. How do movie theaters and parking lots help the poor and hungry that live in the Hardside neighborhood?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not sure that every project will or can do something to directly impact the poor and the hungry. My hope, though, as you look at projects throughout the city, whenever there's a project, you have opportunities for jobs. You have opportunities to work with the community, to hire people right here in the community to help build to do the construction. We have I personally, for months now, have been talking about local preference and hiring local for the city to grow our own and to make sure that we are employing people who live right here in the city. That message has been sent loud and clear to developers. When you look at, I don't want to speak for the developers of the movie theater, but there will be a number of jobs related to that project. There will be other retail within that development. My hope is that there's a pharmacy or a grocery store which could also provide jobs. So there is the potential, because it's a mixed use and you'll have retail and you'll have the theater, that there will be jobs associated with that. And then, we're talking right now to the developer who's developing the residential piece of it, and we're really pushing them to see if they'll be able to include affordable housing. So there's opportunity. I can't say 100% that I know how it's going to directly impact people who are impoverished. But I think anytime that you add jobs and an opportunity for jobs, I think that's a good thing.
Okay. Some great questions tonight.
Yeah.
This is covering a lot of different things.
Yeah.
We've got maybe 3 minutes for some wrap-ups, and I just wanted to see if you could update us a little bit on the fire chief position, the city attorney position, either of those.
Yeah, those are great questions. So fire chief, we're moving ahead. So we'll have interviews soon for that position and hopefully have a decision made. My hope is in the next 4 weeks. City attorney, so let me talk a little bit about city attorney. I announced at our last commission meeting that we were going to open back up that posting and accept more applicants. So we had 7 individuals that we did first round interviews with, and so it was myself and 2 commissioners. So we had a subcommittee of the full commission who did those first round interviews. And at the end of those interviews, the 3 of us were finding it hard to find additional time to really vet out those candidates. And so we were looking at our schedule, and as I said last time, we're embarking on our budget schedule. So starting tomorrow, we'll be meeting every single week for the next 6 weeks for 3 to 6 hours a day on every Tuesday as a full commission working on the budget. And so as Commissioner Kelly and Commissioner Lanier and I talked about the candidates for the attorney, we decided that we felt like the process was really rushed and that we just needed more time. And if we were going to take more time and push off next round interviews until after the budget cycle, that we might as well open it back up and take additional applicants and look at additional candidates. So that's what we decided to do. We're going to push off the city attorney. We'll do another round of first round interviews in June, and then we'll, at the end of June, do second round interviews. So in the meantime, our interim city attorney will be Elizabeth White, and she's doing a fabulous job, and she's willing to serve until we feel really comfortable with the process.
Okay, and you did explain last month, this is one of the few positions that the city commission is charged with filling.
Yes.
Okay.
And I think because of that, as we went through that first round interviews, and talking to my colleagues about just how very important this decision is, we just didn't want to feel rushed. We just want to take our time. We want to get to know the candidates. We want to find somebody who truly is a good fit, and we want to make sure that that's not shadowed by the budget.
Okay.
Yes.
And then budget, you said starting tomorrow.
Starting
Pretty in-depth
tomorrow.
budget sessions. At some point,
Yeah.
the public's involved as
Yes.
far as giving some input. Do you know those dates yet, or where can we find out?
We do have them. I just don't have them off the top of my head. So
Okay.
it'll be at our first commission meeting in June. At the 7 o'clock meeting, we'll have a public hearing on the budget. And so that is on the city's website. So you can go there. Actually, on the city's homepage, there is a section about the budget, and if you click on that, then you can pull up all the information.
Okay, so budget season for July 1 start, so that'll have to
Yes.
be adopted between now and then.
Yes.
And it's required that it's a balanced budget, of course.
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
We have to pass a balanced budget, and my hope is that the next time we're together, we can invite the city manager to talk about the budget.
Sounds great.
Yes.
Sounds great. Well, we're wrapping up for the May edition of City Connection. Mayor Bliss, thank you so much. Great conversation with Kara Wood as well. I want to say thanks to her. We meet again June 6th, I believe, right after Festival of the Arts. So City Connection back on the first Monday of the month. And the next City Commission meeting that is not about this budget strictly is the 10th, next week? Or
Yes. So we meet. So we meet tomorrow for budget. We'll be in budget session all day tomorrow, and then next week on May 10th is a commission meeting.
Great. Well, this is City Connection on GRTV's Livewire Channel 24 with Mayor Bliss. I'm Linda Galash.